Good day, everyone. The Department of Agrarian Reform Regional Office 7 joins the celebration in the 18-day campaign to end violence against women and their children, or the VAWC. We're going to discuss today, this morning, the three topics. First, what is RA 9262, or the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act? Second, why do we celebrate the 18-day campaign to end violence against women and their children? And third, Campaign Spotlight of RA 1131-3, or the Safe Spaces Act. So first, I would like to share to you what is Republic Act number 9262 all about, or the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children VAWC Act. So what is RA 9262? It is a law that seeks to address the prevalence of violence against women and their children by their intimate partners like their husband or ex-husband, live-in partner or former live-in partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, or ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend, dating partner, or former dating partner. It refers to any act of series of acts committed by an intimate partner, husband, ex-husband, live-in partners, boyfriends, fiancé, or the woman who had sexually or dating relationship, against a woman who is his wife or former wife, against a woman with whom the person has and had sexual or dating relationship, against a woman with whom she has common child, or against her child, whether legitimate or illegitimate, within or without the family abode, of which result is or is likely to result in physical, sexual, psychological harm or suffering or economic abuse, including threats or such act, battery, assaults, coercion, harassment, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty. So RA 9262 covers several acts of violence, which are the following. Number one, physical violence. Acts that includes bodily or physical harm, which causes, threatening, attempting to cause physical harm to the woman or her child, or placing the woman or her child in fear of imminent physical harm. Or second, violence is sexual violence, the act which are sexual in nature committed against a woman or her child. It includes but not limited to the following: rape, sexual harassment, act of lasciviousness, treating a woman or her child as a sex object, making demeaning and sexual suggestive remarks, physically attacking the sexual parts of the victim's body, forcing him or her to watch obscene publication, an indecent show, or forcing the woman or child to do indecent acts and or make the film thereof, forcing the wife, the mistress, lover to live in a conjugal home or sleep together in the same room with the abuser, or causing in or attempting to make the woman or her child to perform sexual acts that do not constitute rape by use of force, threats, intimidation directed against the woman or child or her immediate family, and prostituting the woman or her child. The third violence is psychological violence. It is an act or omission causing or likely to cause mental and emotional suffering of the victim, which includes but is not limited to the following: controlling or restricting the woman's or her child's movement or conduct, threatening to or actually depriving the woman or her child of custody or access to her or his family. Another one is depriving or threatening to deprive the woman or her child of legal right, causing mental or emotional anguish, public ridicule, or humiliation to the woman or her child, for example, repeated verbal and emotional abuse, and denial of financial support or custody or minor children, or denial to access to the woman's or children and child. Threatening or actually inflicting physical harm on some of oneself for a purpose of controlling woman's action or decision. It also includes causing or allowing the victim in witnessing the physical, sexual, and psychological abuse of a member of the family to which the victim belongs, or to witness pornography in any form, or to witness abusive injury to pets, or to unlawful or unwanted deprivation of the right to custody and or visitation of common children. Another one, causing substantial emotional or psychological distress to the woman or her child, stalking or following the woman or child in public or private places, peering in a window or lingering outside the residence or the woman or her child, entering and remaining in the dwelling or on the property of the woman or her child against his or her will, destroying the property and personal belongings or inflicting harm to animals or pets of the woman or her child, engaging in any form of harassment or violence. Our fourth of violence is economic abuse. So it is an act that make or attempt to make a woman financially dependent upon her abuser, which includes but not is not limited to the following: preventing the woman from engaging any legitimate profession, occupation, business, or activity, except in cases wherein or the other spouse partner's objects are valid, serious and moral grounds as defined in Article 73 of the Family Code, controlling the woman's own money or property, or solely controlling the conjugal or common money or properties, and destroying household property. So we will discuss to you why we have this 18-day campaign to end violence against women and their children, or the VAWC. So as per Memorandum Circular number 2021-05, it states that the Memorandum Circular is issued to guide the stakeholders on the national observance of the 18-day campaign to end violence against women and their children on November 25 to December 12, 2021. The Philippine Commission on Women, or the PCW, in coordination with the Interagency Council on Violence Against Women and Their Children, leads the national observance of the 18-day campaign to end violence against women, or VAW. The following provides the national legal mandates for the annual advocacy campaign. First, we have the Proclamation number 1172, series of 2006, declaring November 25 to December 12 of every year as the 18-day campaign to end violence against women. Another mandate is from Republic Act number 10398, declaring November 25 of every year as a National Consciousness Day for the elimination of violence against women and children. This year, the campaign generally aims to promote awareness about the Safe Spaces Act, or Republic Act number 11313, or SSA. Both the general public and the institution are mandated to implement the law. Violence against women and girls is not just a major public health problem, but also a grave violation of human rights. It extremely manifests gender inequity, targeting women and girls because of their subordinate status in the society. The United Nations defined VAW as any act of gender-based violence that results or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or mental harm or suffering to women, including threats of such act, coercion, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or private life. Violence and threats of violence can be experienced of every woman of any age, skin, color, gender identity, ethnicity, religion, disabilities, economic, and social status. Global estimates by the World Health Organization indicate that 1 in 3 women, or 35% worldwide, have experienced either physical and or sexual violence from the intimate partner to a non-partner in their lifetime. In the Philippines, the Philippine Demographic Health Survey in 2017 released by the Philippine Statistics Authority revealed that 1 in 4 women aged 15 to 49 has experienced physical, emotional, sexual violence from their husband or partner. Because VAW appears as one of the country's pervasive social problems, various measures and mechanisms have been employed and implemented to address it, one of which is the 18-day campaign to end VAW, an advocacy campaign that is observed annually from November 25 to December 12 as mandated in Proclamation 1172 Series of 2006. The 18-day campaign to end VAW supports the Philippine government's goal of protecting the human rights of women and girls by upholding its commitment to address all forms of gender-based violence as enshrined in the 1987 Constitution by virtue of Republic Act 1039-8 or the Act declaring November 25 of every year as a National Consciousness Day of the elimination of the VAWC. Government agencies are mandated to raise awareness of the problem of violence and the elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls. Globally, the 16-day action against gender-based violence has been acknowledged to support the international campaign that originated for the first Women Leadership Institute at Utah's University, New Jersey, USA in 1991. The observance of this campaign started in November 25, which is the International Day to Eliminate VAW, up to December 10, which is the International Human Rights Day. To emphasize the VAW is a human rights violation and to ensure better protection of survivors and victims of violence. In 2002, the Philippine government, through the Philippine Commission on Women and the key stakeholders, joined the global campaign initial to push for laws and establishment of institutional mechanism to address VAW. In 2006, then President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo signed Proclamation 1172, extending the national campaign to 18 days, thereby including December 12, a historic date that marked the signing in the 2000 of the United Nations Protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in person, especially the women and children, to supplement the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crimes. The campaign was further strengthened in 2008, then when the United Nations Secretary General launched the Unite to End VAW campaign, which envisioned a world free from all forms of violence against women and girls. For the United Nations, this vision can only be realized through meaningful actions and ongoing political commitments of national governments supported by adequate resources. There are 18 things that we can do to help end VAW. First, for the women and girls, we have empower yourself. Know your rights and available courses of action in case these rights are violated. Second, speak out. Report to the authorities in case your rights are violated. Third, encourage others to fight for their rights. For the men and boys, first, respect women and girls in your home, workplace, and community. Join males groups promoting anti-vow efforts and participate in discussion to burden your awareness on the advocacy. And third, enlighten, advise perpetrators to seek help and join the male anti-vow supporters. For the government agencies like us, the Department of Agrarian Reform, we have to equip yourself with training and capacity development session to improve service delivery for your clients. Develop monitoring and evaluation strategy to assess the service to your clients and supporters. Third, let people know that you provide the services. We need to inform the public that there are government offices that they can turn to and trust to, assess them, and towards healing and seeking justice. For the barangay, first, ensure that your barangay vow desk is functional. You can use the barangay vow desk handbook developed by the PCW and the DALG with partner agency to guide you on what to do. Second, establish linkage with local and national government agencies, as well as the organization near your barangay where you can refer victim survivors of VAW for needed assistance which the barangay is not able to provide. Another one, promote harmonious family and community relationships in your barangay, which is grounded in mutual respect for human rights and take proactive steps to attain a vow-free community. For the private sectors, support the anti-vow efforts of the government and your immediate community. Establish your own action desk where employees and clients can go to in case of vow happens. And develop integral rules and proactive ensure that your workplace is vow free. For the academe and the training institutes, include concept of vow and women's human rights and lessons guides of your teaching staff. Another one, continually conduct spearhead anti-vow advocacy in your campus and if possible to your immediate community to extension programs. Third, set up a community of decorum and investigation or the CODI where students and employees can seek help. Now let's move on to our third topic, which is Republic Act number 11313 or Safe Spaces Act or Bawal Bastos Law. This is a new one. So what does the Safe Spaces Act cover? The law covers all forms of gender-based harassment or the GBSH committed in public spaces, educational or training institution, workplace, as well as online space. Gender-based streets and public spaces sexual harassment. The GBSH in street and public spaces is defined as acts which are committed through any unwanted or uninvited sexual action or remarks against any person regardless of the motive for committing such actions or remarks. So what do public spaces refer to under the law? So public spaces refer to streets and alleys, roads and sidewalks, buildings, restaurants and cafes, public parks, school and churches, government offices, malls and public markets, transportation terminals and common carriers, spaces used as evacuation centers, public utility vehicles, public washroom, private vehicles covered by app-based transport network services, recreational spaces such as but not limited to cinema halls, theaters and spas, bar and clubs, resort and water parks, hotel and casinos and internet shops, and all other areas regardless of ownership, openly accessible or offered to be accessed by the public. What are the acts of gender-based sexual harassment in public spaces? Number one, or letter A, catcalling or taghoy sa tuwa pag Binisaya, or unwanted remarks directed towards a person commonly done in the form of wolf whistling, ngunit taghoy, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist slurs as well as unwanted invitation. So what is sexist remarks or any slur statements that are indicative or prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination in the basis of sex, typically against women. Homophobic remarks are indicative of fear, hatred, or aversion towards a person who are perceived to be or actually identify as a lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, pansexual, and such other persons of diverse sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or towards any person perceived or actually have experienced same-sex attraction. Misogynistic remarks or slurs, statements that are indicative of the feelings of hating women or the belief that men are inherently better than women. Transphobic remarks or slurred statement. It is a statement that are indicative of fear, hatred, or aversion towards person whose gender identity and or expression do not conform with their sex assignment at birth. Persistent uninvited comment or gesture of a person's appearance, relentless request for personal details, statement of sexual comments and suggestions, public masturbation or flashing of private parts, grouping, making offensive body gestures at someone, and other similar lewd sexual action. Any advances, whether verbal or physical, that is unwanted and has threatened one's sense of personal space and physical safety. This may include cursing, leering, and intrusive gazing, and taunting. Another one, persistent telling of sexual jokes, use of sexual names, and lastly, stalking or conduct direct of a person involving the repeat visual and physical proximity, non-consensual communication, or combination thereof that cause or will likely cause a person to fear for someone's own safety or the safety of others or to suffer emotionally distress. What are the penalties of GBSH in public spaces? Penalties may vary according to the act of GBSH or the gender-based sexual harassment committed and how often a person was convicted for violating the laws. So for verbal, first offense, 12 hours community service, inclusive of the gender sensitivity training, GST, and a fine of 1,000 pesos. Second offense, imprisonment of 6 to 10 days and a fine of 3,000 pesos. And the third offense, imprisonment from 11 to 30 days and a fine of 10,000 pesos. Demonstrative GBHS. First offense, 12 hours community service inclusive of the GST training and fine of 10,000 pesos. Second offense, imprisonment from 11 to 30 days and a fine of 15,000 pesos. Third offense, imprisonment from 1 month to 1 day to 9 months and a fine of 20,000 pesos. This is under Section 12.B. For the GBSH, through stalking and physical advances such as touching, pinching, or brushing against the genitalia, groin, or breast. First offense, imprisonment to 11 and 30 days or a fine of 30,000 pesos, provided that is included attendance in a GST to be conducted by PNP in coordination with the local government unit and the Philippine Commission on Women. Second offense, imprisonment of 1 month and 1 day to 6 months and or a fine of 50,000 pesos. Third offense, imprisonment of 4 months and 1 day to 6 months or a fine of 100,000 pesos. This is based on Section 12.C. Local government units may come up with ordinances that impose heavier penalties for the act specified in the Safe Spaces Act, subject to the condition set under Administrative Code. Additional penalties if the perpetrators is a driver or operator of the PUB. Cancellation of license of the driver by the Land Transportation Office or the LTO. Suspension or revocation of franchise by the Land Transportation Franchising Regulatory Board, LTFRB. This sanction may be imposed upon order of the proper court upon an OR upon order of the LTO, FTRB in an administrative proceeding. PUB include motor vehicles considered as public transport, conveyance, or common carrier duly registered with the LTO and granted a franchise by the LTFRB, including special PUVs such as school services. PUV also includes public water transport utilities, air carrier and operators as registered with and or regulated by the Maritime Industry Authority and the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines and the Civil Aeronautics Board. What are the roles of the local government units in implementing the anti-GBSH in streets and public spaces? Under the law and its implementing rules and regulations, the local government units shall have the following duties to address the GBHS in public spaces. First, pass an ordinance to localize law within 60 days from its effectivity. Disseminate or post in conspicuous places a copy of the law and the corresponding ordinance. The local government may come up with information, education, and communication, IEC materials, which may be in their respective languages. Another one, provide measures to prevent GBSH in educational institutions such as information campaigns and anti-sexual harassment seminars. Discourage GBSH and impose fines on acts or gender-based sexual harassment as defined in the law. Establish an anti-sexual harassment hotline where personnel assigned to attend the hotline knowledgeable on GBHS and form of assistance made available by the local government unit and coordinate with the DLG in implementing the law. Another one, establish a referral system for complaints of GBSH in streets and public spaces. This may form part of the existing referral system for complainants or other forms of gender-based violation. Provide training on the law of punong barangay and the members of the Lupon Tagapamayapa in cases covered by the Katurungan Pambarangay system for traffic enforcers under this jurisdiction and adopt training modules for concerned LGU personnel down to the barangay level. Another one, set up anti-sexual harassment or ASH desks in all barangay, city, and municipal halls, preferably staffed by a woman. VAWC desks may also serve as the ASH desk and the same shall be strengthened following the guidelines to be set by DALG. And lastly, create a mechanism for handling and documentation of complaints, including those in cases covered by the first and second offenders of verbal GBHS. Where can the victim of GBSH in streets and public spaces seek assistance? In all cases, go to the local government units via the local anti-sexual harassment hotline, nearest police station, to the Women and Children Protections Desk, local social welfare development office, public attorney's office subject to the PAWS persons qualified for legal assistance. For streets, roads, alleys, parks, go to the local traffic enforcer. For PUB by driver or operator of PUB, go to the local traffic enforcer, LTO, and LTFRB. Close proximity to the LGU hall, go to ASH desk officer of the local government unit, provincial, municipal, city, or barangay. For malls, bars, public establishment, ask officer designated by operator of establishment. For example, the security officer. Gender-based online sexual harassment includes acts that use information and communication technology in terrorizing or intimidating victims through threats, physical, psychological, emotional, unwanted, sexual, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist remarks and comments online, whether publicly or through direct and private message. Invasion of the victim's privacy through cyberstalking and incessant messaging. Uploading and sharing without the consent of the victim any form of media that contains photos, voice, or video with sexual content. Any unauthorized recording and sharing of any of the victim's photo, video, or any informations online. Impersonating identities of victims online or posting lies about victims to harm their reputation. Filing false abuse reports to online platforms to silence victims. What is cyberstalking? Cyberstalking is a form by stalking that is committed through electronic medium in which online communication takes place. To constitute an offense, the conduct must be manifested through the repeated use of electronic communication in stalking. Stalking online profile, which is publicly accessible in itself, does not constitute an offense. What are the penalties for online gender-based sexual harassment? The penalty on the online GBHS violation is prison correctional in a medium period, imprisonment of 6 months and 1 year to 2 years and 4 months, or a fine not of less than 100,000 pesos, but not more than 500,000 pesos, or both at the discretion of the court. If the perpetrator is a juridical person, its license or franchise shall be automatically deemed revoked, and the person liable shall be the officer thereof, including the editor or reporter in the case of print and media, and the station manager, editor, and broadcaster in case of broadcast media. An alien who commits gender-based online and sexual harassment may be subjected to deportation proceedings after serving sentence and payment of fines. Where can a victim of online gender-based sexual harassment file a complaint? So the victim can file a complaint directly with the National Bureau of Investigation through its Cybercrime Division, the Philippine National Police, the Anti-Cybercrime Group, or the Office of the Cybercrime of the Department of Justice. Practical tips in saving digital evidence and online report. Take note of the Uniform Enforce Locator URL of the web address of the website or social media account of the perpetrator. Make a printout of the content being complained of by opening a browser, Google Chrome, Mozilla, Firefox, etc., on a laptop or desktop, going to the pertinent account or page and print the said web page. Contact authorities via PNP, Anti-Cybercrime Group, e-complaint at https://acg.pnp.gov.ph/e-complaint/ or through their complaint action centers. Gender-based sexual harassment in the workplace includes the following. One, an act of series of an act or series of acts involving any unwelcome sexual advances, requests or demand for sexual favors, or any act of sexual nature, whether done verbally, physically, or through the use of technology such as text, messaging, or electronic mail, or through any forms of informative communication system that has or could have a detrimental effect on the condition of an individual employment or education, job performance opportunities. Letter B, conduct a sexual nature and other conduct based on sex affecting the dignity of a person, which is unwelcome, unreasonable, and offensive to the recipient, whether done verbally, physically, or through the use of technology, such as text messaging or electronic mail, or through any forms of information and communication systems. Third, conduct that is unwelcome and pervasive and creates an intimidating, hostile, or humiliating environment for the recipient. Workplace includes all sites, location, spaces where work is being undertaken by the employee within or outside the premises of the usual place of business of the employer. Is sexual harassment between peers or a subordinate to a supervisor now covered under this law? Yes. The first law to penalize sexual harassment, Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995, or otherwise known as Republic Act 7877, recognized that sexual harassment occurs in work, education, and training environments. However, it requires the existence of authority, influence, or moral ascendancy between the offender and the offended party. It did not specifically address the issue of hostile environment resulting from sexual harassment between peers or co-employees or those committed against a supervisor. The Safe Spaces Act addresses this gap by recognizing that sexual harassment can be committed between peers or by a subordinate to a superior officer. What can a victim of a workplace GBHS do? The victim can file an administrative complaint with a committee of decorum and investigation and or file civil and or criminal case before the courts. What are the responsibilities employers under the Safe Spaces Act? Under the Safe Spaces Act, employers must do, number one, disseminate or post in a conspicuous place a copy of the law to all persons in the workplace. Second, provide measures to prevent GBHS in the workplace, such as conduct of anti-sexual harassment seminars. Create an independent internal mechanism or a committee on decorum and investigation to investigate and address complaints or gender-based sexual harassment. Develop and disseminate in consultation with all persons in the workplace, a code of conduct and workplace policy, which shall expressly reiterate the provision of gender-based sexual harassment, describe the procedures of the internal mechanism, and set administrative penalties. The code of conduct to be developed by the employer may provide for penalties to be imposed on members of the CODI in cases of non-performance and inadequate performance of functions in Section 32, Development of Code of Conduct, and RA 1331-3 based on the IRR. The CODI to be established by the employer should be adequately represent the management, the employees from the supervisory rank, the rank and file employees, and the union or employees association, if any. Designate a woman at its head, and not less than half of its members should be women. Be composed of members who should be impartial and not connected or related to the alleged perpetrator. Investigate and decide on the complaints within 10 days or less than upon receipt thereof. Observe due process. Protect the complainants from retaliation without causing her or him any disadvantage, diminution of benefits, or displacement without compromising his or her security of tenure. And lastly, guaranteed a gender-sensitive handling of cases and confidentiality to the greatest extent possible. What are the penalties of the employers? So failure to implement their duties under the law, fine of less than 5,000 but not more than 10,000. Non-action on reported acts of GBHS in their workplace is a fine of 10,000 but not more than 15,000. So what are the duties of educational and training institution under the Safe Space Act? The same requirement and corresponding penalties imposable upon employers are also applicable to heads of education and training institution. So these heads are also required to disseminate the law, develop their own code of conduct, and establish and or update the composition of the CODI. Note that these heads have to harmonize the CODI for their employees for their students. In addition to such duty, it also requires them to designate an officer in charge to receive complaints regarding violation of the law and forward them to CODI. Second, impose administrative disciplinary measures for students who commit acts of GBSH against their fellow students or teacher. Third, if a school knows or reasonably should know about acts of gender-based sexual harassment or sexual violence being committed that creates a hostile environment, the school must take immediate action to eliminate the same act, prevent their recurrence, and address their effects. And fourth, educate students from the elementary to tertiary level about the provisions of the law that how they can report cases of gender-based threats, public spaces, and online sexual harassment committed against them. School heads and heads of training institutes covered by the Commission of Higher Education or the CHED, the Department of Education, the DepEd, the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, TESDA, shall comply with the standards set by the said agency. The CODI to be established by the Education and Training Institute should, number one, be composed of representatives from the school administration, the trainers, instructors, professors, or coaches and students, or trainees, students, and parents, as the case may be. Second, designate a woman at its head and not less than half of its members should be women. Be composed of women who should be impartial and not connected or related to the alleged perpetrator. Investigate and decide on the complaints within 10 days or less than upon receipt thereof. Observe due process. Protect the complainant from retaliation without causing her or him any disadvantage, diminution of benefits, displacement, and without compromising her security of tenure. And lastly, guarantee sex-sensitive handling of cases and confidentiality to the greatest extent possible. What are the penalties of GBHS education and training institutions under SSA or the Safe Space Act? For schools, institution head do not implement their duties under the law, a fine ranging from 5,000 to 10,000 pesos. For school or institution heads who did not act on reported GBHS in their institution, a fine ranging from 10,000 to 15,000. Note, minor students who are found to commit GBHS shall be held liable for administrative sanction by the school as provided in their school handbook. Other silent features, we have the restraining order. Where appropriate, the court, even before rendering a final decision, may issue an order directing the perpetrator to stay away from the offended person or a distance specified by the court, or stay away from the residence, school, place of employment, or any specified place frequented by the offended person. Psychological and counseling services. A victim of the GBSH may avail of the appropriate remedies as provided under the law, as well as psychological counseling services with the aid of the local government unit and the DSWD in coordination with the Department of Health. Any fees to be charged in course of victims' availment of such remedies or psychological counseling services and other services in consonant with RA 11036 or the Philippine Mental Health Law shall be borne by the perpetrator. LGU and concerned agencies may partner with private entities in the provision of psychological counseling services and other related processes, such as the development of a referral system. In all instances, any fees may be charged or incurred in the course of the counseling shall be borne by the perpetrator. Exemptions. Acts that are legitimate expression of indigenous culture and tradition, as well as breastfeeding in the public places, shall not be penalized by SSA. Expression of indigenous culture and traditions include, among others, the wearing of traditional attires of tribes or clans that may show partial nudity, provided that such expression of indigenous culture and traditions do not discriminate against women, girls, and persons of diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Confidentiality. The RA 1131.3 requires that any stage of investigation, prosecution, and trial of an offense under RA 113113, the rights of victims and accused who is minor shall be recognized. The law requirements that confidentiality should be observed at all times by employees and heads of the schools and training institutions in complaints of GBHS SH in their institution. Where to seek help? So go to the public attorney's office. So their email ad is pau_executive@yahoo.com. Then go to PNP Women and Children Protection Center and go to online GBSH Cybercrime Investigation Coordinating Center and submit a cybercrime complaint. Go to the PNP Women and Children Cybercrime Protection Unit and, of course, Office of the Cybercrime. Under the SSA, the following agency are mandated to routine inspection in relation to GBHS in the workplace: the Department of Labor and Employment and the Civil Service Commission. So thank you very much, everyone. I hope we learned a lot from Safe Space Act. Why do we celebrate the 18-day campaign against violation against women and their children? And of course, the VAWC. So thank you, and let's be vigilant and have a nice day, everyone. Salamat!